Hey, what is going on, guys? Max Settings here, and welcome back to another review. In today's review, we are going to be taking a look at the Etymotic ER4XR. Now, this is one of Etymotic's current flagship offering IEMs. These come in at a $350 MSRP, although they're usually about $300 on Amazon. And this is what I bought at Can Jam New York 2020 this year. I never thought walking in that what I would walk out owning would be a pair of Etymotic IEMs, but as I mentioned in my review of the JVC Ha FDX1, the new dual flange tips really changed Etymotic for me, and we will be talking about these in just a bit. So moving on into the specs as usual. Like I mentioned, these are a $350 MSRP. They are 45 ohms with the sensitivity of 98 dB a volt. They have a frequency response of 20 to 16,000 hertz. And that is about all the relevant specs for them. So the ER4 is a pretty typical build for an Etymotic IEM. The only real difference compared to like the ER2, I think, is just like the cable. It's a little bit nicer of a cable, 5-foot cable with a nice big splitter on it, and kind of goes to a braid above the Y split. But very, very tiny, small IEM, as you can see. And very, very light. Now, the Etymotics, you do have to deep insert, which we'll talk about more in just the comfort section. But yeah, it feels like an Etymotic IEM. I think it's a metal body as far as I can tell. And really nice cable on just a standard 3.5mm cable, although there is a 1/4-inch adapter included in the box, which we'll talk about in a second. So let's go ahead and do comfort real quick. So Etymotics have always never been comfortable for me. I could just never do the tri-flange, and the foams were always kind of iffy. But the new dual flange tips that they're coming out with fairly soon are really nice. I really like the dual flange tips. You still have to get them in deep, but they don't go as deep as the tri-flanges did. And they make them much more comfortable. And I actually find them very, very comfortable with the dual flange tips. And I can finally wear Etymotic IEMs, which makes me very, very happy. And these are the only reason why I own the ER4. If it were not for these, I would not be owning this IEM right now. But with these tips, I do find them very, very comfortable, which is quite nice. So moving on into accessories, the ER4 comes with quite actually a lot of them. Comes in this very big case with a whole bunch of tips, tri-flange, foams. The newer ones should be coming with dual flanges. There's a 1/4-inch adapter. I think there's a cleaning brush. There's all kinds of stuff included in the case. You also get a nice little smaller carrying case, which is what I use on the regular to carry them. Just a nice little small case to put them up in there with. And yeah, so nice cases included with these, and a lot of accessories, which is quite nice. Okay, so now moving on into the sound of the ER4XR. Now, there are quite a few versions of the ER4 that have come out over the years, although the two most current ones are the ER4SR, which is studio reference, and the XR, which is extended response. The only difference between the 4SR and the 4XR is the XR has a little bit more bass. Now, this is not like how the ER2XR is a lot more bass than the 2SE is. The 4XR is just ever so slightly warmer than the 2SR, which I guess let's go ahead and hop into frequency response. So the ER4XR in the bass is pretty much flat. It is ever so slightly elevated in like the sub bass and mid bass. I'd say 1 to 2 dB. It's not super boosted bass. Whereas I think the SR had a slight little bit of roll off. I think this is boosted, I'd say 3 or 4 dB over the SR, but the SR I think rolled off a little bit, where this is just enough bass boost to get it to just, I'd say, slightly above flat, which I quite like, but it's not like a big bass boost on a single BA IEM, which I actually didn't mention that before. This is a single BA IEM. That's all one BA driver. So anyway, moving on after that, you actually have a little bit of a forward mid-range. I think the mids are forward maybe 2 or 3 dB above where it's like a perfectly flat neutral mid-range R. And then your treble is, I'd say, about in line. I could see people wanting a little bit more treble than this, and there's really not much air above 10K. I mean, this thing doesn't even make it to 20 kilohertz, but it doesn't really matter. There's nothing really in music that high anyway. So these have very similar to the classic Etymotic diffuse field signature. Not quite as bright and as mid-forward as a true DF, but slightly mid-forward IEM with, I'd say, fairly inline treble, though I could see maybe wanting a touch more and a touch more air. But overall, I would say this would be classified as a fairly neutral IEM, to use that term. Okay, so let's hop into why I bought this, and that is the detail. The amount of detail this IEM pulls for even the full 350 MSRP is nuts. And I mentioned that in the JVC review of how much detail this had and how this blew me away. This is a whole nother level. This thing is really, really detailed for its price. There's IEMs I've heard that cost 5 times this that don't have this much detail. I mean, this thing honestly is competing with a lot of, I'd say, well-respected $1,000 IEMs in terms of detail. Now, obviously, there are IEMs for $1,000 that I do think beat this in detail, like the Sony IERM9. And Andromeda, I think, is still going to beat this in detail overall. But the amount of detail this pulls for like the $300 Amazon price point is really crazy. It easily outresolves the JVCs. Really, really detailed IEM. Now, moving on into timbre. It's not too bad, actually. Now, it is a BA. It has a little bit of BA timbre, but it is some of the better BA timbre that I have heard. It's not too unnatural. It's a little bit plasticky, but it's not overly harsh or sibilant like some BA IEMs I've heard. And it is some of the best BA timbre that I have heard in an IEM. So overall timbre is fairly decent. Now, as for dynamics, surprised how decent the bass is for a single BA IEM. Now, it's not as good as DD bass. It's still BA bass, but it is also of the better BA bass I've heard, and really impressive for a single BA IEM. They have a decent amount of punch. Overall, macro dynamics is okay. They have decent dynamic range and actually really decent micro dynamics, really good with distinguishing the little minute details in your music. So really good detail overall. Now, as far as head stage goes, I don't think they are really that wide or super, I guess, wide sounding. Yeah, IEM. Now, they're not like really almost mono sounding, kind of like how the Tin P1 was. They definitely do have a very distinct left-right, but they're not like super wide sounding out there like some IEMs are. But they do image very, very well. I was really, really good imaging on the ER4. So overall, the sound on the ER4 is really, really good for its price. So into comparisons, compared to the JVC Ha FDX1 here, ER4 is more detailed. I actually like the FR of this more than the JVCs. I find this more comfortable than I do the JVCs. Now, the JVCs are tunable. I think these have somewhat better bass because they are a dynamic driver, even though they are kind of lean. But these, I think, will overall punch harder if you give them the bass. The ER4, I think, actually does have better timbre, even though it's that BA timbre. This is a little bit more metallic. I still really like the FDX1, but the ER4 is going to replace it for me. And out of all the sub $500 IEMs, this is definitely by far the best one that I've heard. I still need to hear the Fearless S8F. That people tell me that that's like the best IEM under 5, but haven't heard that yet. As of now, this is the best sub $500 IEM that I've heard. And like I mentioned, there's stuff that over $1,000 is not on this level. This is a crazy, crazy good value that should not be ignored. This is what I left CanJam with after hearing everything. I did not expect that, It is really, really good, and it's definitely worth your money, and you should take a look at it. And you don't need anything special for it. Honestly, I mostly just use it with my iPhone Lightning dongle with Tidal, and it works great. But if you have a portable player, by all means use it, but you do not need anything fancy to get these to sound really good. But anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed my review of the Etymotic ER4XR. Fantastic IEM. Really, really, really like it. And I do use it quite a bit. But anyway, guys, links of where to buy these in the description below, as well as my Twitter, my contact email, and all other relevant information. I look forward to seeing you in the next review. Bye.